Welcome to What the No-Co, where we get to know the people, businesses, and heroes that make this community special. I'm Anthony Cassell, owner of A&R Home Team, and your host. Now let's go meet Northern Colorado. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is Anthony Cassell, your host and owner of A&R Home Team. This is What the No-Co. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Jenni Morris. She's a local lender, and she's also sort of a serial entrepreneur. She has a couple different businesses. So without further ado, let's meet Jenni.
Howdy.
Welcome, Jenni. All right, welcome to What the No-Co. So this is the second time that we did this because in all of my brilliance, I completely deleted your first interview.
Really proud of you.
But you know what? Today we're going to focus on something a little different than the first interview. Here's the script from the first interview. We still have it. And we're going to touch on some of these points. Really, we're going to get to know you. So, introduce yourself to everybody.
So my name is Jenni Morris, and I'm a local mortgage lender here in Northern Colorado. And I work for a brokerage, but we kind of run our own businesses. You get your own clients, you really help them through every step of the process. And so I'm the only one with my company up here in Northern Colorado.
What's the name of the company?
It's called Free Enterprise Funding.
Free Enterprise Funding. So that's the brokerage that you work for. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. Like me, I'm a real estate agent, and when you're in the mortgage side, like I work for a place called Resident Realty. When you're out there and you meet an agent or a lender and they work for Lender United Wholesale, Free Enterprise, or Keller Williams, or whatever it is, or Resident Realty, we really own our own businesses, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's 100% self-employed.
It is. You have to be very self-motivated.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're somewhat of a serial entrepreneur, right? You have a couple other irons in the fire.
I do. I've really enjoyed for a long time working for myself, and have really gone on several things that I have passions for. So one of them is doing holistic health coaching. So that's something that I've worked with a lot of women in HR positions mostly, and really helping them with stress management and things like that, which is really honestly overlapped into mortgage lending because it traditionally could be a stressful process, and so my focus is to make it the least stressful process as possible and make it just more smooth, and that's kind of my focus with my clients.
How long have you been doing the coaching?
That's been several years. I've had that, and I've also run different retreats. I teach yoga on the side, so that was another side passion, is starting to run these wellness retreats for 3 to 4 days, and this was all on the East Coast when I lived over there.
Okay.
But it's we all have so many different passions, and it's fun to be able to wear different hats.
Why is it so intimidating, do you think, for people to even apply for a mortgage?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's a lot of maybe bad stories out there, or people have had a bad experience. But truly, when you have a team, such as a realtor and a lender who work together, then you're going to have all the help that you need. And I think a lot of people also have misconceptions on what it takes to qualify. And they kind of maybe disqualify themselves before even talking to somebody. And you'll be surprised in what we're able to do and get really creative to help more people get into houses.
What are some of those misconceptions that you see a lot of?
Good question. I was actually talking to somebody about this last night, is that a lot of people think that you have to have a really high credit score to get into a house. I just talked to a woman and she thought it had to be in like the mid 700s. And there's one kind of program, right, conventional, that a higher score will help with, but you can technically qualify for a mortgage all the way down to 500. Most lenders will work 620 and above, but 580 is also a credit score. There's quite a few programs out there. And one thing to also note is that your mortgage FICO score is different than what you'd see on Credit Karma or something like that.
Sure.
So it's best to talk to an actual lender to see what your mortgage FICO is, because it might surprise you.
While we're on this topic of credit scores, let's kind of touch on financial literacy, really exciting stuff. From a 20,000 foot view, there's a lot of misconceptions about credit. There's Credit Karma, there's several other apps. When you're applying for a house, it's different. Houses are traditionally some of the best assets that you can have, brick and mortar, over any other asset. I've had clients that were a little low on credit, went out and bought a car thinking that that was going to build their credit over the next year. In that scenario, how is somebody right and wrong there? Because they're sort of right? That is going to build your credit. But what are the pitfalls of that?
Great question. And credit is such a multifaceted component, right? There are lots of components to what makes up a credit score, because it's not just having things on your credit. That's one thing, right? You need to have different, whether it's a credit card or loans out to build credit. And then you also need to have how much of your available credit are you actually using. And honestly, each bank, each kind of loan that you could take out counts a different amount. So really there's not like the perfect answer, right? If the perfect answer existed, everybody would do it. But the main things to think about is you want to have as much available credit as possible with the least amount used. So when you take out a car, for example, if the problem with your credit is that you don't have enough things on your credit, that could help your score. But if you do have enough things, all it does is make your available credit too low and you're using up too much of it, then it might be a detriment to you. Sure. So that's why talking to a professional helps, so you can kind of weigh out, all right, is this going to help me? Is this going to hurt me and make me qualify for less on a house also? Because when you're buying a house, your debt to income ratio is one of the biggest things that we focus on. So if you have a lot of debt, such as credit card debt or a car payment, that can lower the amount that you qualify for a house.
We all kind of do that, right? We all start off on the internet, let's just be honest, because you touched on talking to a professional several times. It's sort of like we all do this. You're in Home Depot, you're looking for some abstract, weird shaped item. You have no idea where it is. Here comes the Home Depot guy walking down the aisle. You think to yourself, oh God, he's gonna talk to me, isn't he? And then they ask you, hey, can I help you find anything? And you're like, no. And you walk around in Home Depot looking on your phone of where and what this item is for about 45 minutes. And then you go find the guy, because who can find anything at Home Depot, right? We all sort of do that instead of talking to the professional first. You mentioned there were different aspects of credit. It's not just your score. It's not just how much debt you have. What are the big three things that mortgage lenders for a house are looking at?
Okay, sure. That's a great question. So these are the three things you want to set up way ahead of time. And so I suggest people, even if you're 2 years out, to start the process with speaking to a professional, even if you're 2 years out. Because number one, yes, credit score. And there's things you can do to build up credit in a pretty quick amount of time, actually. But then it's also your debt to income ratio, right? So it's important to look at the difference between what you owe already and how much you're bringing in every month. And the third thing is actually your income history. So your job history, how long you've been in each job, and there's a few specificities about what is counted as far as your job income that really only a mortgage lender knows, because we've been trained in this. So that's where it's really best to ask ahead of time. And for income history, we're looking at 2 years. So that's why I say if you're 2 years out, talk to somebody now. That way you're prepared and you know that you're setting yourself up.
Are there any leniencies in that 2 years? For example, if somebody was going to college for 6 years to be an attorney, and then they were out in the job force for 7 months, they landed a great position, they don't have 2 years of work history, what do you do?
Yes, and I love this because I actually just helped a client. She closed on Monday. And so college actually counts as income history. So that's a really exciting thing, because if you get a job right out of college, you have a letter saying that you have received this position. As long as you receive your first paycheck by the time the loan closes, you are good to go. So really somebody right out of college can get into home ownership. And gosh, I can't imagine if I had started that young, like how much difference your finances would be 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, when you start that early at age, 22, 23?
Yeah. It's huge, We all have our parents that are like, oh, when we bought our first house, interest rates were at 13%. And it's like, yeah, but the house was $60,000. Now the house is $600,000. Imagine if you bought a house 20 years ago. If you're 40 and you bought a house when you were 20, what would that house be worth right now?
So much.
Buying houses is sort of a long play, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It's not like day trading that can make you rich like that. If you buy a house, you stay in it for a long time, rent it out, go get another one, it could really set you up for the future.
Yeah, and that's the difference where I feel a lot of people will easily go out and buy a car, right? And that's debt for them, or go put money on a credit card and buy things and rack up their debt. But then they have a lot of nerves to buy a house, which I think is interesting because the house is the one thing that you can do that's an appreciating asset. A lot of the wealth here in America is from homes, right? From home ownership. So it's one of the smartest things you can do with your money, especially considering the opposite is rent, right? Throwing it down the drain.
Mm-hmm. You're paying somebody's mortgage.
Yep.
Might as well pay your own.
Yes.
Let's kind of touch on debt to income ratio.
Sure.
I go through this all the time with clients. What is counted? I guess what I'm asking is what is counted as debt to income? It's not like your monthly cell phone bill.
Sure. Yeah. So your debt would be your credit card payments or anything that shows up on your credit report, right? So it's not going to be your groceries or your, light bill or your cell phone bill. None of those actually.
Not even your rent.
Not even your rent. No, just anything that will report to credit.
Credit cards, cars,
Any private loans.
Child support.
Nope, that will not show up on there, but it does count. So that counts on both sides, right? If you're giving someone child support, you need to let your lender know that. And if you're receiving it, that can help you qualify for
Same
it
thing
as well.
with spousal support.
Spousal support as well.
Okay, so not your credit cards, not your food, not your monthly living expenses. Let's touch on the true costs and the ancillary costs of buying a house. Every deal is different and can be structured in different ways, but there is sort of a standard. So what are the standard expenses that apply?
Sure, definitely. So number one, not the agent, right? The agent is actually covered by the sell side, not the buyer side. And for a buyer, the main things, everybody's heard of down payment usually, right? Down payment is the amount that you're putting towards your house. You're already owning that much in your house. And I know there's a lot of misconception here too. A lot of people think that you have to have 20% down, which is a significant amount of money with the home prices today.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely not true. Really what we're looking at for a conventional loan is 3% when you're a first-time home buyer, 3.5% for FHA. If you're a VA, 0 down. So there's also a lot of options, down payment assistance programs that are out there that can make that down to 0 or less. So that's one cost. The second is closing costs. And so these are the fees that are associated with buying a house and also prepaying your escrows. Escrows, I know if you don't own a home already, you're like, what the heck does that mean? This is your taxes, your insurance, anything that's going to go into this account basically to be paid out. So you'll prepay your insurance and taxes ahead of time. They're not paid just month to month, usually a year in advance. So those are things that are incorporated into closing costs, and you can usually suspect around 2% of your loan amount to be what closing costs are going to be. So those are the two main big things, but two other things that people don't know about maybe is number one, you're going to be paying for an appraisal. And that's paid before you get to the closing table, so that's upfront. And that can be usually between $650 to $750 around about. Those are some of the things that you want to think about. Earnest money as well. And that really is what an agent will help you determine how much that is.
And a lot of that escrow stuff that you were talking about is really handled by us, mainly by you, the lender. Escrow, also known as your mortgage payment. It's like your escrow's here, and your escrow pays your taxes, your insurance, principal, your interest, but you only write one check a month, and then the escrow pays all those other components. Let's use round numbers, and I'll put some numbers up here on the screen, shooting from the hip. So if I'm wrong on these numbers, they'll be right on the screen. $400,000 house, quick and dirty math on an FHA is 3.5% down. It's $12,000. And then the quick math on closing costs, which incorporates all those other things that you just talked about, is 1.5%. So that's $6,000. That's $12,000 plus $6,000 is what you're going to pay as a buyer going into a $400,000 house using an FHA. Like you said, if you use conventional, you can go down as low as 3%. Can you still use FHA, VA, and put money down? Because you said VA is 0% down. But obviously, the more cash you put down, the lower your payment gets. Kind of touch on that. Can't you use a VA loan and still put cash down?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You can put as much down as you'd like. And there's some strategies to this also, because you can also use that money in a different investment or in buying your rate down. There's a lot of different ways that, depending on your situation, we'll strategize. And one thing I do like to say is, no matter if you have $1 in your house or you have $500,000 in your house, it's going to appreciate at the same rate, right? Because that's really what we're looking for, and why buying a house is so valuable, because it appreciates. You don't necessarily have to put money down. It won't change much other than your monthly payment. But in reality, a lot of time, if you put a little bit towards buying your rate down, it'll change your monthly payment a lot more.
That's huge. We all think $10,000 is a lot of money. It's a lot of dollars, right? But when you put that down on a mortgage additionally, let's say you're putting down $12,000 and you're like, you know what? I have an extra $10,000. I'm going to knock that down. It's really only going to save you about $10 a month, $12.
Yeah, 20.
So you might as well just keep that $10,000 in your pocket so you're not house poor when you move in, right? Now let's talk about first-time home buyer programs. We've all heard that.
Yeah.
Is first-time home buyer actually a thing?
Well, so there's lots of different programs depending on where you are in the states also. So for Colorado, we've got one called CHAPA, and there's also a ton of different programs through specific lenders that we use. So what these mean is being a first-time home buyer, which, by the way, even if you have bought a house before, if it's been a few years, you still might qualify for this. So don't think that you're just automatically exempt if you've bought a house before. But you can get money towards your down payment. You can basically get it covered.
How you and I would refer to it in the business is DPA, or down payment assistance, not first-time home buyer. So let's take that $400,000 house again, $12,000 at 3.5% for an FHA, which FHA is very common for a first-time home buyer. That, we're here in Colorado, so that's the state of Colorado would be taking care of that $12,000. So really, you're getting into a house for $6,000. That's not that much when you're talking about $400,000.
No.
Now, there is a couple of ancillary costs on there that are pretty minimal, but worth mentioning. An inspection's going to run you $600-700. That's an inspection, a radon test, and a sewer scope. You probably want to get all those, even if it's new construction.
Especially if it's new construction.
And then there's the appraisal, which is going to be another $600 or $700. The earnest money is usually 1.5%. Or 1%, of the purchase price of the house. You're going to lay that down first, but then that gets rolled into that 1.5%. That gets rolled into that $6,000 in this scenario that you would be bringing to the table.
Yeah, so you don't ever lose your earnest money, right? It comes back and it counts as how much you're putting down for down payment, closing costs, all of that.
So a $400,000 house, earnest money would be $4,000. In this scenario, you would be coming to the table with $6,000 total, but you've already paid $4,000 of it. So really, you're coming to the closing table with $2,000. And the state of Colorado is paying $12,000.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to mention is, depending on the market, which last year and the beginning of this year, there's also something called seller concessions. And so that's where the selling side can actually contribute towards the buyer's closing costs. So that could be to buy down your rate. That could actually be to just pay for the closing costs in general. There's different fees in prepaying your escrows. That's something that can be negotiated and can even help out with the cost a little bit there too.
Let's go over like a worst case scenario of you're so scared, and trust me, I was too when I bought my first house. I wasn't in the real estate business when I bought my first house. It was a very scary leap of faith. What I learned from that is you take that leap of faith, worst case scenario, you're 6 months to a year out if you do a certain amount of things with your credit and this and that, and then you're just still renting. So it's not that big of a deal to just reach out to a lending professional and apply. Maybe
one thing to note is that being a buyer, right, you do not have to pay for anything to talk to us. We can go through all of your finances. We can do a budget review. We can see exactly where you are, and it won't cost you a penny. The lender actually pays us when we close on a loan, and that's it. So, it's great to just utilize our services to see where you're at, because that way there's moving forward into a decision in uncertainty, and nobody likes to do that, right? Especially when it comes to something that could make you a lot of money, right? It's better to have enough knowledge and feel like you're making an educated decision.
That pretty much sums up a first-time buyer. If people have any questions, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, best way is to reach us through email or through phone number. My email is Jenni with an I, .morris@fe-funding.com, or give me a call. My number is 423-800-2468. You can also find me on Facebook and social media as Jenni Morris.
At the end of these videos, I like to ask every interviewee the same 4 questions. These are unscripted.
Okay.
You need to just say the first thing that comes to mind. Don't think too long. If you think more than like 3 seconds, you thought too long.
Okay.
You ready?
All right.
What is a noise that you just can't stand?
Okay. This is gross, but people hawking loogies. I can't stand it. Okay, when I was in Six Flags when I was way younger, this is an amusement park, I was like walking along, and I felt this thing on my shoulder.
Oh, no.
I thought it was a bird poop. It was not a bird poop. They were one of those cars, that go over the amusement park. You're welcome for making everybody throw up in your mouth.
You got lubed on.
I got loogied on.
Oh my gosh.
Traumatizing.
How old were you?
I was probably in high school.
Oh no.
Yeah, there with my mom.
Oh, did mom laugh?
Probably not.
I would have laughed.
You would have.
Yeah, probably. Question 2, favorite word.
Favorite word? Groovy.
Favorite curse word.
Oh goodness. I don't use curse words. Favorite one would be one that my granddad taught me when I was maybe 10. Go granddad. Mm-hmm. And it's actually in a different language. So he taught me "Besami culo," because this is the phrase that he would tell my grandmother's parents every time he would leave their house. And they thought it was a like endearing phrase. He would say, "Besami culo," and they would say, "Oh, he's so worldly," and it means kiss my ASS.
He was telling him to kiss his rear.
Yeah.
4th question, what unconventional animal do you wish that you could have as a pet?
Oh, giraffe. Miniature giraffe.
They have
No, they don't. No, they don't exist. But we're just talking dreams here.
Maybe with all the genome editing and stuff, that could be a possibility. Okay. Well, that'll wrap things up. Thanks for tuning in. If you have more questions about this, obviously reach out to Jenni or myself. Please like, subscribe, comment, and please share this video with anybody you might think would find value in it as well. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks.